Alright guys, this is the spoiler discussion for Doctor Strange. If you do not want any spoilers, you can just check the link in the description and then that'll take you straight to my spoiler-free review that I just did. But going right into it, I mentioned one of my actual bad points of this film, for me personally, was actually the villain. And that's what I want to get into first because that's been a big thing where people are like, oh, Marvel villains aren't that great and stuff like that. And I never really had an issue with that. I think Guardians of the Galaxy was probably the greatest example to me. I know some people didn't care too much for the villain from Thor the Dark World, but I felt like he actually did some stuff in that movie. I felt like Rodan kind of showed up in like one actual scene or two actual scenes. He actually physically showed up to do something himself. And other than that, it was him really talking to Thanos and all of Guardians of the Galaxy. So that was like, he's still like, I'd say the worst villain of the Marvel films. But going into this, it was like, alright, I like the main villain, whose name I definitely don't remember because it was very weird. But the way they did it, I was hoping that they do this. I was very curious because I'm like, I know a little bit about Doctor Strange, and I certainly know his greatest villain, who is Dormammu. So I was like, alright, I caught that early on. They're doing the spell and stuff, and they say Dormammu, and I was like, okay, they're talking about Dormammu. They're saying his name within a spell, so Dormammu's somewhere in here. I don't know how it's going to play out, but Dormammu is here somehow. And I figure with it being, Dormammu was like the height of Doctor Strange villain, so I was like, he's not going to show up in this movie as the main villain like halfway through, which would have been amazing. I would have loved that, but I knew they weren't going to do that. This is like Doctor Strange's first outing. They're going to have like a lesser villain, and then, Dormammu will come out later, and that'll be like, effing insane. People will get incinerated and this and that. We'll just have to wait and see that. But the way it all played out, I was like, alright, I like the villain that they have. He starts off really cool because he actually has his own little flock of people that left, the monastery or whatever with him. So it's like, alright, he's a cool villain. He starts off, he doesn't even have to get his hands dirty. He does end up chopping that guy's head off at the opening. But he has people that follows him. So it's like, alright, that in itself I thought was cool. He's not just the lone villain. He's a rogue sorcerer. He actually learned under the Ancient One. And he ends up taking, some dark magic with him. He takes those spells. Excuse me. And I thought it was cool. I was like, you know what? I actually kind of like this villain. He started off, I thought, really good because he was so deadly and he was difficult to fight. And he could survive where, his minions were just getting destroyed in like that first fighting scene. And then it goes through and he's fighting against Strange and stuff. And he gets locked up. And that's when they have that cool conversation. And he's like, she's not who you think she is. Talking about the Ancient One. And I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. He's sort of, in a sense, he's the type of villain where it's like, I'm not doing this just to be the bad guy to take over. I'm doing this because I want to live forever. That it was like, I want this power, mostly to just live forever. So we have to get Dormammu here and take over so that everyone can have infinite life. And I thought that was cool. And he's like, how else do you think the Ancient One is able to be the Ancient One and live so long? And I thought that was cool. I was like, alright, this villain knows what he's talking about. He's like, he knows certain secrets that no one else knew about the Ancient One, mostly because he took those 2 pages. But, excuse me, he has followers that actually believe in him. He wants to bring Dormammu out and stuff like that, and he's making a play for himself. And then as it went on, it was like, alright, well, he's not, I felt like he just wasn't doing too much. And it's like, ultimately, he did exactly what he planned to do. And I guess it was because of the way Strange solved it, where it was like, oh, he went straight to Dormammu. They didn't even have to kill this dude. It was like, yeah, I just made a deal with him. And then they just got, like, absorbed and they died. And I was like, oh. I felt like that was a somewhat lackluster ending because this guy was so insanely powerful that they still didn't technically defeat him. It was like, Strange technically just made Dormammu mad because he was like, man, I'm stuck in this effing loop. I don't want to deal with this crap. And that was pretty much it. Like, that's how he won. And I thought that was unique because I thought it was funny and cool. But that's what, it was like a great moment for Strange. And then it's like, oh, but this, like, brings him up. And then that's kind of what brought, the villain, or I guess he was the main villain of the movie. Dormammu just showed up in it. But I was like, that's what brought him down to me, was that ending. It was like, oh, they go through this cool fight, especially that ending scene where everything was reversing and stuff. And he gets trapped in the wall, but then he breaks out. And I'm like, they're going to have to keep dealing with this guy, and they have to just flat out defeat him. But he's so strong, and it's difficult for them to do that. And I thought that was great. I was like, that's what a good villain is. Like, he can't be just beat up by everybody. And I thought it would have been way cooler if they legitimately had to team up, like 3-on-3. They get rid of the lesser people, which was also phenomenal. How I think because he started with like 4 people with him or whatever, and everything was reversing. Like the woman, I don't know if that was the same woman or what the deal was, but if that was, she got beat up so many times in this movie because she got like kicked through the window when they were in the I'm just gonna call it the mansion because I forgot all the actual names they gave everything. But when Strange was like holding on to the lamp because the world for him was like turned and he would have dropped down the hallway, and he sees like the glass and he drops and just kicks this woman straight into the desert, and then something else happened to her. I think she got beat up and like flipped through another dimension or something when she fought the ancient one. And then the ending sequence, she trips, she gets knocked on the ground, and all the water reverses, and she gets trapped in a tank. And I'm pretty sure that was the same person, and she like drowned to death or something. And I was like, wow, they just beat the crap out of that woman. If that was the same person, it could have been a totally different woman. But I was just like, I feel like they keep the same couple of people alive. But it was great. Some of the women they just effed up the women in this. They had some crazy moments. But even with all that stuff, I was just like, man, I thought it was kind of a lackluster ending to who I honestly thought was a pretty cool character. I thought he was a really good villain. It was just the conclusion to his villainy just kind of sucked to me. It was like, oh, that's a smart way to solve the problem, and it was kind of cool. But I just thought, like they were already doing it, like, and plus the way they introduced Dormammu, I was kind of like, I don't, it's not that epic because it's not like he looks like Dormammu. He looks like Galactus from the old Fantastic Four movie, and I was like, I don't, this ain't that cool to me because Dormammu, I think that's a really epic design, and this is just like a giant wobbly face. And I was like, I don't, it's not like he even remotely looks like the actual Dormammu. It's just a big presence, and that's it. And I was like, like we didn't even need to see Dormammu, considering that's how it ended, how it was. It was just the loop, and him actually making that bright. It was kind of cool because that's a bit of a thing where they kind of have to team up and do some certain stuff in the comics. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool from a certain. There's like a specific story. I can't think of what it is right now, but it was like Strange did something where it was like, you have no choice. You got to help me. Because basically everything will fall apart. It was something like where he was going to destroy the Dark Realm, or he let somebody else out, and they would destroy both realms. So it was like, well, now we got to team up, and we beat them, and so you go back to the Dark Realm and leave the world alone. And it was, and that's kind of how he tricked Dormammu during that. And I was like, all right, that's kind of cool because that's from a story that I know, where it was like, hey, I'm just here to make a deal, and that's what happened. So it was, in essence, that was great to me for Strange himself. And then it was like, that just sucks because it brought down the villain so much to me as a conclusion, because it was very clear he was an insanely great fighter through like the whole movie. He's like beating everybody up. He, the Ancient One, of course, was fighting like 3 people at one time, so there's a bit to that. But he still got the, that wounding hit, and he threw her through the thing, and that was a crazy death as well. There were just, some of the deaths in this were just like, wow, they're never going to find your body. Like the person that died in the beginning of the movie, when the Ancient One like turned the world sideways, and somebody like fell, and it was like a grinder, and they just fell into a folding loop, and I was like, well, they're gone forever. They're dead. And then the way the Ancient One was gone, he just flicks her through a freaking portal, and they can't reach her, and she just hits the glass and hits the ground. I was like, yeah, I'm surprised there was even a chance to take her to the hospital. In all honesty, and the way she hit that glass and then the ground, there's no one should have lived through that. Her head should have just been like honestly, I mean, she was falling from so high up in the air. She should have there should have been blood splatter, but it's PG-13, because in real life that joke would have just been like her whole body wouldn't have squished, but there would have been some splatter, 100%. So just the way that they ended his character was like the one big issue I had about the whole movie. I was like, he's a great fighter. He's beating everybody all the freaking time. And then it's kind of just like, yeah, I just made a deal with him, so bye. And then they get turned into like these little gross looking zombies, and they just float off into the dark world. And that, I was like, honestly, that was like the one issue I had. Whole movie, that was like my main problem. But other than that, I freaking loved it. I thought it was funny. I thought the visuals were phenomenal. That's like my favorite thing, like especially the introduction to magic. And I love the way they did astral projection, where everything slows down, because I didn't realize that from the trailer when the Ancient One like hits him and he like floats out of his body. I thought that was just like, okay, that's just like one scene, they do it that way. But that's like every time you go into astral projection, or most times at least, because there was the scene when and then or the doctor, she was working. I don't know if she was a doctor or nurse, but doctor, and she's working on his body when he's in the astral realm. So I guess sometimes you can slow it down, and other times if you don't need it to be slowed down, it won't be. So I was like, okay, that's interesting, because she's moving, at regular speeds now. So I was like, all right, I guess you can kind of decide how fast time moves, and it seemed like she was moving a little faster than me. So maybe you can have it go super slow, or you can have it go even faster to just speed up the process. But excuse me, I thought that was cool. I like the visuals for that, and everything's darker when you're in the astral projection, so that was pretty cool. The fight scene when he's in astral projection against the other guy, after the great scene with the cape protecting him and just like flipping the guy all over and like slamming him up and down, that was really funny. I don't know if this was the point, but it definitely made me think of Aladdin, the carpet from Aladdin after it started to move a lot more on its own. I was like, this just makes me think of carpet from Aladdin, and I thought that was really funny. But I like what they did with this movie. I thought it was really a great introduction to magic, because yeah, we needed that. I think something different for the movies, for the Marvel movies. I'd say something new for. I mean, it's still kind of new to me because I don't really read the comics. So I was like, I know who Doctor Strange is. I saw like the old animated movie with his origin and stuff. So I knew what was gonna happen in this movie. They changed like the villain. I think is different. I could easily be wrong. I don't remember. That was years ago when I saw the animated movie. But I love what they did with it. And one of the big things I forgot from that movie is that Doctor Strange was a dick. Like, I forgot how arrogant he really was. And it was like, like I always think, whenever anyone asks, like my girlfriend, she doesn't really know comics like that. So when she asked me like who Doctor Strange was, I was like, basically like the simplest explanation I think you can give anyone who doesn't know, comic books is like, all right, well at this point everyone knows who Iron Man is. So it's like he is the magic version of Iron Man. He was this really cocky guy. Something happened, and then he realized his true calling, and so that's he it was a little different. Well, actually, it was kind of the exact same thing. Iron Man, he had to save himself, and so did Doctor Strange, and then it led them to be better people. So that that was kind of the explanation I gave her. And then you watch it, and it's like, man, he's like 10 times cockier and 100% more assholey than Iron Man, and I'm totally fine with that. I love the way they played it out. Super cocky. He's got like the drawer with all the watches. That's just a waste of money. Like, why are they spending? That's like, are they spending all the time? I was so curious. I was like, this is just a waste of electricity. That's so much money, and you can just line them up real easy. But they got to spin and stuff like it keeps the gears working or something. I thought it looked amazing. I was like, that's really sweet, but that's like 100% waste of money. But I love the way they did it, and he's just so cocky, and he won't help people, where it's like, I can't tarnish my perfect record and stuff, and it's like, oh, this is interesting, but way too risky, so I won't do it, but this is interesting and easy enough, so I'll do it. He gets into the accident, it's like, no one could have done better, and he's like, I could have done better, which, there were people when I was watching the movie that were talking, like, it wasn't too much, it was, like, annoying, but I could hear them, they were making certain jokes and stuff, and the guy, before he even said I could do better, the guy was like, I could do better, and then of course they have the pause, and he turns, he's like, I could have done better, and it's like, I knew, like, as soon as the person said it behind me, I was like, that's exactly what he's gonna say, like, that's how cocky he is, and he's gonna say it, and of course he turns, and that's what he says, and it's like, yep, we all knew that was coming. So I like the way they did the cockiness and how just distraught he was and everything like that. And going into learning magic, I thought was really good. And that was probably, if you hadn't seen my normal review, that was my favorite part of the movie, was seeing him before he was, mystical Doctor Strange, and seeing the beginning of him as, magical Doctor Strange. Like the part where, honestly, it didn't fall apart to me until that literally the ending. And I was like, oh, I hate how they defeated the villain. That was the only issue I had in the whole movie, was how they defeated it, or defeated him. But I liked it. I thought it was good. It wasn't like the crazy epic blockbuster thing, because that was something else I mentioned in my review, is that I don't plan on seeing this a second time. Unless I see it in like the dollar theater, or I take like my young cousins to see it. I don't really plan on seeing this too much. I thought it was good, and I certainly enjoyed it, but it wasn't like a crazy epic experience. I Also, another thing, I don't know if this will make people like fall in love with Doctor Strange either. I was like, it's his origin, but at the same time, it was kind of like half his origin and half of it was still the really crazy over the top blockbuster element where it's like the entire universe is about to be destroyed by this other thing. So it was still both of those in one, and it was like the origin stuff is phenomenal, but the villain stuff was just pseudo generic. It was kind of super generic because it's just take over the whole universe thing, but at the same time it's like they kind of blended both sides together, and I think the origins have worked for what it was as the first movie, and then the blockbuster, typical rule everything and destroy the universe type thing, it like worked like 98%, and then just that ending, and that was personally for me, but at the same time, just going through it, I don't know if this will actually like get people to fall in love with Doctor Strange. I'm sure people will love to see it because watching him fight or watching the characters fight in general is actually very entertaining because the visuals are really good, and over time of course he'll learn more skills, which is one of the greatest things about this, and that's why this is like why I actually love the actual ending of it after they do the villain stuff. He's not Sorcerer Supreme, and I love that. I was like, that's actually great. This isn't like, oh, it ended and now he's Doctor Strange, the best sorcerer on the planet type stuff. It was like, no, we beat the bad guys, and now we just got to stay here and be careful because listen, we don't have a Sorcerer Supreme. He doesn't wear the Eye of Agamotto, which I thought was cool. I was like, oh, he has it in the movie because it's like, hey, this is Doctor Strange, this is his costume pretty much, and he basically just took it. He wasn't supposed to, but he took it, and he gets the cape, so he gets to keep the cape because it chose him. But I love that. I was like, okay, he doesn't get to wear like, which we find out is actually an Infinity Stone, which I'm sure some people guessed. I hadn't even considered it. I was like, it didn't even cross my mind what, that they would talk about Infinity Stones. But excuse me, I like what they did with that. It was like he's not Sorcerer Supreme. He's just a great sorcerer, and he helped them win by using the Eye of Agamotto, and I thought that was really cool. So I like that they did it that way. He's not at the peak of his power or anything like that. He's Doctor Strange. He still has much to learn. I like the way they ended it, where he decides, like he kind of keeps that lesson from the Ancient One, where it's like he can be like the other guy, where he imbues his body with magic all the time, and that keeps his hands from shaking and stuff. But he kind of keeps it at the end of the movie, and it's like, you know what, I'm gonna keep this, but I'm gonna, be better. I'm still gonna, basically I'm just gonna stay as, the mystical side of me and protect the world from whatever evil comes this way. So I thought that was really well done. And then of course we go into our two extra scenes. So pleasantly surprised by the mid-credit scene. I did not expect Thor to show up. It was also funny when he's like, I don't drink tea, and then he puts his hand down and the big beer comes up. But I wasn't expecting that, so I thought it was just going to be like, alright, we have Thor and we have Hulk. I think everyone's known that at this point. And then he's like, oh, so if I help you, which this is another thing which isn't that big of a shocker, but Thor knows that his father's missing, which I thought was cool, because that was like the big ending for the last Thor movie where his father disappeared, and Loki is actually the one that took his place. So he of course knows that now, where it's like, hey, I know my dad's missing, so we're looking for my dad, and I gotta deal with Loki. So he knows his brother is officially alive and stuff, and I feel like we might get some flashback stuff in Thor where when everyone first realized, like, oh crap, that's actually Loki who took the throne. So I thought that was cool. It was like, alright, we know at least where Ragnarok actually is. He already knows what's happening and stuff. And then Strange is like, so if I help you get your, find your father and deal with your brother, you'll get off Earth. And I was like, yeah. He was like, great. Let's get up and let's go. I'll help you with that. So I would assume he's going to have a role in Thor Ragnarok. I like to think that it's going to be similar to like Ant-Man and Spider-Man, in Civil War, where it's like they're referenced a little bit in like the end clips, and then they show up in the next movie. But it's like, all right, I helped you with this thing, and now you go off and you deal with it. I have my little portion, and you go ahead now. So that'll be cool to see how they deal with that. What Strange ends up doing to really help them out. There's also, now that we have Doctor Strange, I think the only person we're missing is probably Reed Richards. If they end up ever doing Fantastic Four again, I think they'll have like all the players to do Planet Hulk, which is pretty cool. But they could probably skip on that, since, of course, since Sony or whoever owns the Fantastic Four license, they still have that. So I think it might be Columbia. It's somebody. I don't really care. So they have kind of the two people that they really need within the universe to do Planet Hulk, and that's or the three people, which is Hulk, Iron Man, and Doctor Strange. So they might do that sometime. That might be like way down the line. I don't know if they'll ever do that because it's such a crazy thing. But I thought it was cool. You know, they're already bringing some references in from Planet Hulk, so we'll see how it plays out. But Doctor Strange meeting Bruce Banner, who is currently in Hulk mode, I don't know if they're going to go that route either, where it's 100% Hulk, or, you know, they kind of make a deal, because Banner and Hulk do that a lot, actually, where it's like, alright, they actually get along just enough, and it's like, hey, go be Hulk, and whatever. So, don't know if they're going to go that route, but Doctor Strange running into Hulk might be like, oh, you're human, but you gotta get the F off of this planet because you suck. So, we'll see how all that stuff plays out, but I thought that was really cool, because now it seems like he'll be in, you know, Thor as well, at least a little snippet. And then we get our extra credit scene with Mordo, and he's turning evil. I didn't know that was a thing, because like I said, I don't read the comics, so I don't know his deal, but him going to the dude, and he, like, it was like some Shang Tsung type stuff, but for magic, and he like hits him and like sucks the magic straight out of him and paralyzes him again. I was like, alright, he had, like, before he even did anything, I was like, he's like a robot. Like, his problem is, you know, just like with Avengers 2, it's like, oh, humans are the problem. It's like, oh, we have all these villains and stuff, but we're the problem as sorcerers. There are too many sorcerers on the planet. I was like, yeah, he did kind of the robot logic there, but I think it'll be cool because he seems to be a good fighter. So hopefully it's just, hey, he just straight up fights this dude and he has to kill him. Or he becomes a good guy and he's like, hey, you're being dumb. And he does the hero talking thing and that turns him good. But we'll see how it all plays out. I did enjoy this film. Like I said, I thought it's great action scenes. Just my one issue was just the way they did the villain, and it was like they had who I thought was a great villain, and then they went to like, hey, let's do this great reference of the epic villain that everyone loves from Doctor Strange, but we see a weird version of him, and then it just kind of deletes, you know, the film that was in the rest of the movie, because it's like, alright, well, he made a deal, bye, and that's it. And I was like, oh, he was such an epic fighter, no one could seem to beat him, and then it was just, let's make a deal, and you know, that's it. So I felt it was somewhat lackluster because they didn't really, it wasn't like an epic way to defeat him to me. It was funny, and it was cool for Strange, but overall I was like, I was disappointed, but still love the ending because he's not at the height of his power. He's still just a sorcerer. He's just trying to figure it out still. He can't do all the spells perfectly and stuff. He's not manipulating the realms. He's just making shields and whips, and that's it. So I love that. Like, he's not at the height. He's still got a lot to learn. Still a lot to see him grow with and develop. So I love that. Of course, want to know what you guys thought about the movie, so please comment below. Let me know everything you guys thought about this. Good, bad, what you hope for the future, what you expect from the future based on this film. Just everything you thought about Strange and how he adds to the universe. And of course, thank you guys for watching.